When disaster strikes, who can save us? Do miracles happen, or are they a trick of the traumatized mind? And when it comes to angels, who gets one and why? Welcome to Strange and Unexplained with me, Daisy Egan. I have thankfully never been witness to a major weather event. I think the worst I experienced was a hurricane sometime in the 80s, but the only thing I remember was my parents putting duct tape on the windows before the storm arrived. I have been through a couple of earthquakes, but they were small enough that my natural reaction was more, yuck, I don't like this, and less, is the highway going to collapse and will I be able to get home? Scientists say that one is coming. It's just a matter of time. I don't live in Los Angeles anymore, but when I did, I had all kinds of survivalist scenarios running through my head all the time. I worked far enough away from home that if the big one hit, I'd imagined it would take days of raiding camping supply stores and hiding out from roving bands of violent opportunists to get home. Listen, I have a very active imagination. Plus, I once listened to a really scary podcast from NPR about what could happen in Los Angeles when the big one hits. Also, Parable of the Sower is my favorite book, so end-of-time plotlines loom large in my psyche. My point is, there are major weather events that are so catastrophic that surviving them is only the first challenge. The next challenge is piecing your life back together and making sense of how you made it through with impossible odds. Joplin, Missouri does not generally fall prey to earthquakes. It is, however, right in the heart of tornado country. For the folks who made it through the worst tornado in Joplin's history, making sense of the devastating destruction, the loss of loved ones, and their own survival would be an epic challenge. Some of those folks did it with the help of some very unusual strangers. I think I've told the story before about being interrupted mid-performance in Kansas by a tornado siren. Everyone went down into the nearest shelter and the show was over. For locals, this was par for the course. It's like that scene at the beginning of Interstellar when the crowd notices a dust storm coming and just calmly leaves the baseball game and heads for their cars. Just another day of living on an Earth ravaged by climate change. When we emerged from the shelter, whatever we had been hiding from had passed and there was no damage. It was as though nothing at all happened. Maybe nothing had. Everything just went back to normal, but I kept wondering how and why people live in places where weather is so unpredictable and so deadly. Obviously, that's a rhetorical question. I know there are 1,000,001 reasons people live anywhere. Anyway, the people of Joplin, Missouri, for whatever reason, live in Joplin, Missouri, and tornadoes are a part of their regular lives. A meteorologist in the area, Doug Heddy, didn't usually work on weekends, but despite the beautiful weather in Joplin on May 22, 2011, a small handful of thunderstorms started appearing in southeast Kansas in the mid-afternoon. And so, Heddy was at the station checking the various machines that go bing to assess the threat to Joplin. In a documentary from the Weather Channel, Heddy would later say, quote, "We weren't getting any touchdowns until about 5:30. This is when the storm finally really came together right on the west side of Joplin, a monster debris signal that then marched right through town." End quote. Once it became clear that the people in the area were in danger of being in the path of something really dangerous, sirens were initiated. However, when the first siren went off at 5:17 p.m., most people ignored it. Indeed, the city had been testing the sirens, and it seems like when the sirens went off that afternoon, most people thought it was just another test. According to a paper from the National Weather Service about this particular event, quote, "Similar to seasonal weather patterns, the perceived frequency of siren activation, false alarms, led a large number of participants to become desensitized or complacent to this method of warning. Many noted that they hear sirens all the time, and sirens go off for dark clouds. They are bombarded with sirens so often that we don't pay attention. Sirens have gone off so many times before. Sirens are sounded even for thunderstorms. And all sirens mean is there is a little more water in the gutter. End quote. At about 5:34, experts realized the monster debris signal was, in fact, a tornado. 4 minutes later, at about 5:38, the second siren went off, and that was when residents took notice. In less than 5 minutes of touching down, this tornado, a classic wedge tornado being large in size with a funnel as wide as it was tall, was already doing damage in the Ep4 range of the enhanced Fujita scale. In the Weather Channel documentary, Doug Hetty says, quote, "You're thinking maybe it's an Ef2, maybe it's an Ef3. So yeah, it just didn't set in during the storm how bad it really was. Our tower cam actually got hit. I swung it around to the west, and because it was rain-wrapped, all I saw was a black wall coming. I could not actually see the tornado, and then I started to pick up debris on the tower cam, and then it went out." End quote. The tornado reached a level of Ef5, with wind gusts estimated to have reached more than 200 miles per hour. 5, by the way, is the highest level on the enhanced Fujita scale. A level 5 tornado, according to the official enhanced Fujita scale, can cause, quote, "massive/incredible damage. Well-constructed homes are swept away. Steel-reinforced concrete structures are critically damaged. High-rise buildings sustain severe structural damage. Trees are usually completely debarked, stripped of branches, and snapped." End quote. And the damage caused by this tornado was massive and incredible. For 38 minutes, this monster swept through town. It took with it 161 lives, injured over 1,000 more victims, damaged 75% of the town, and completely destroyed the other 25%. According to an official survey of the damage, quote, "The tornado generated 3 million cubic yards of debris. There were 4,000 water leaks, including 25 ruptured fire service lines. More than 20,000 people were left without power. According to the Missouri Public Service Commission, the tornado damaged or destroyed 4,000 service poles, 1,500 transformers, 110 miles of line, and 1 substation." End quote. Causing $2.8 billion worth of damage, this was the 7th deadliest and most costly tornado on record. Structures were so severely damaged, some were left with only one wall standing. Steel columns meant to hold up buildings were ripped from the ground. Whole buildings, including the Home Depot and Joplin High School, looked as though a giant came through and stepped on them. The damage was so severe, in fact, that many were shocked to learn that there had only been 161 deaths. An area filmmaker named Gregory Fish made a 2024 documentary about the tornado and its aftermath titled The Butterfly People. And in it, an EMT named Rusty suggested the low death count was miraculous. He said there was, quote, "something beyond this that was bigger than us," end quote. In the hours, days, and weeks that would follow in the wake of the devastating storm, many more in Joplin would come to believe that a miracle had occurred. Strangers, I wrote today's episode from the comfort of my brand new outdoor sectional from Wayfair. Wayfair totally transformed our outdoor living game. Now, instead of killing my back on our Adirondack chairs for hours on end because I refuse to go inside when the weather is nice, I can lounge out on my back deck and write in comfort. I've even taken a nap or two out there, and let me tell you, it is as close to heaven as I think I might ever get, all things considered. You can shop with Wayfair Verified, your shortcut to the good stuff. Their team of product specialists vets everything by hand using a 10-point inspection system, testing things like quality of materials, functionality and features, and even how long it takes to build. Now, as those of you who listen to my Love is Blind podcast know, my husband loves doing so sexy man work. But If you're not into assembling furniture, no worries. They can handle delivery, installation, and assembly. You just pick what you want, and they deal with the rest. With over 20 million 5-star reviews, you're not buying blind. See real customers, real homes, real feedback for anything before it hits your cart. Ready to upgrade your home for way less? Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home and get your space ready for less. That's WAYFAIR.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
As the dust settled on the damage done and survivors began to stumble out from the wreckage of their town, they began sharing stories of how they'd managed to make it through one of the worst tornadoes in recorded history. Many said that in the worst of it, they had help from unearthly beings. They were tall, winged, and glowing, according to these varying yet strangely consistent descriptions. A piece in the Columbia Daily Herald from 2021 describes how in hospital waiting rooms, waiting in line for supplies, or getting help from Red Cross volunteers or therapists, survivors told, quote, eerily similar stories of seeing beautiful humanoid creatures with wings hovering over certain children and parents in that storm in a protective manner. They were described as colorful and pretty, so children called them butterfly people. Danielle Robinson, clinical director at Joplin Child Trauma Treatment Centers, said of the stories she heard firsthand, they somehow knew these butterfly people were there to calm them and help keep them safe, end quote. These survivors would describe that as the roof of their home was being ripped off their house, a being with wings came and shielded them and their parents, leaving them relatively unharmed amidst the violent chaos. According to a Facebook post on Dark Ozarks, a page dedicated to exploring the dark history, mysteries, and legends of the Ozarks, there was, quote, no interval for the stories to be passed along. The accounts were not affected by hearing other accounts. The accounts were virtually identical in detail, end quote. They were beings of light that were taller than a regular person, made of light with wings like butterflies. Ground zero for the tornado, where most of the damage occurred, was Range Line Road. According to the Post, this is allegedly where survivors would gather to look for missing loved ones or to help with the cleanup. Here, people would also report seeing, quote, tall, dark-cloaked figures walking with survivors, end quote, and were, quote, guiding or watching over the survivors along their walk, end quote. A post on Reddit, I know, claims a mother and her young daughter were traveling, but got out of their car when they realized the tornado was about to reach them. The mother used her body to shield her daughter, quote, and braced for impact, except it never came. The daughter is said to have asked her mom, weren't they pretty? One user on Reddit reported having had a friend who was picked up and thrown by the tornado who, quote, swears she watched the butterfly people / angels carry her mom away, end quote, after her mom died in the storm. This same user said they heard a lot of stories about the butterfly people from both children and adults while helping with post-storm cleanup. It bears mentioning that these stories don't come with any citation, so, grain of salt. Then again, none of these stories are verifiable anyway, whether they come from the horse's mouth on a documentary or someone quoting the horse on Reddit. The Midnight Train podcast, a podcast about strange phenomena and unsolved mysteries, covered this story in 2021 and reported that one little boy claimed 2 butterfly people held his dad's car so the tornado wouldn't take it. And also that a nurse there to help with first aid in the field reported seeing something with wings larger than the average human that was with a man she was helping that had been impaled by a wooden stake. She said it was there to comfort the man as he died. According to the Butterfly People documentary, one little boy told the mayor at the time, quote, I was laying there, and the butterflies were over me, and I was so happy, end quote. Another survivor featured in the documentary, 4-year-old Via Dennis, and her family were in a wooden shelter that her dad had just recently reinforced with a new metal post. She remembered telling her grandparents that it was hard to breathe, and then she saw 3 glowing figures. She described them as looking like cookie-cutter angels with rainbow lights. She said they asked if she was okay, and she replied, "No, no, no," and then the angels disappeared. Recounting this moment in the documentary, Via said they felt comforting and otherworldly. Apparently, her brother said he didn't see them and teased her for it, but she thought it was just because he was jealous. What kind of guardian angel is like, "You good?" And then when you say no, 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 they're like, "Bet," and fly away. You may have noticed, stranger, that these stories are all from children. And while it is true that the majority of the stories of ethereal flying protectors in Joplin did come from children, there were a few adults with their own stories. A mother of 7 named Laura Lena, featured in a Monsters and Mysteries in America episode on the storm, reported a particularly wild story recalling sheltering in a closet with 5 of her children. The other 2, we have to presume, were somewhere else. The tornado ripped the roof off their house, and her daughter's glasses shattered. Suddenly, her son Daniel said he saw something in the sky above them. A woman, quote, dressed in white with wings, covering the hole in the roof over them, that kept eye contact with him. When the tornado passed, the woman left. The house was completely destroyed, except for the closet they were in. In fact, it was the only part of the house still standing. Laura and her kids left the closet completely unharmed. Laura fully believes that God sent someone to watch over and protect them. And while it was her child who actually saw the thing, she said, quote, "All of a sudden, I felt this peace that I never felt before, and I felt wings surround us," end quote. One of the most commonly repeated stories that came out of Joplin that terrible day is that of 10-year-old Mason Lillard and her 14-year-old cousin Lage. Mason and Lage were out with their grandparents at Home Depot to grab some things before the storm hit. Their grandpa went inside while Grandma Sharon, Mason, and Lage stayed in the SUV. The storm hit so suddenly, they didn't have time to seek shelter inside the store. Grandma Sharon told the kids to get on the floor of the car. The roof of the Home Depot peeled off the store, and the SUV was thrown more than 980 feet across the parking lot. According to a piece on KOAM News from 2021, when they found Mason, she had a 1-inch thick iron rod lodged through her shoulder, coming out the other side through her back. The impact broke 7 of her ribs and punctured her lower lung. It also had just missed her spine and liver by 1/4 of an inch. Lage was also sucked out of the truck, and when he landed, his skull was split open, and reportedly someone came over to hold a purse over his head. He was pronounced dead and brought to the morgue. A few hours later, an ER nurse named Tracy was walking through the morgue when she touched a body and heard it scream. It was Lage, lying in the morgue, definitely not dead. Lage was rushed into an hours-long emergency surgery and thankfully survived. And just a quick side note here, I had never heard of something like this happening before. It's probably more common than I think. I had just never heard of someone being found alive in the morgue after being pronounced dead. But then, while I was writing this story, I looked up some information on gas and other toxin leaks that were said to have happened as a result of the tornado, and I got directed to the Fox News website, which is chock-a-block full of pop-ups and annoying video stories, and one of them just happened to be a brand new story about a toddler being pronounced dead at the scene, only to be discovered alive once they brought him into the morgue. This is absolutely terrifying. Tracy, the nurse that found Lage alive, was only at Freeman West because her hospital, St. John's, was destroyed by the tornado. She almost didn't go to work that day because she was scared to leave her kids home alone. Mason said that as the tornado reached them, she felt a hand on her shoulder that she thought was Lage. She is quoted on the podcast This Paranormal Life as saying, quote, "I thought it was Lage, but when I turned, I saw 2 angels in robes, one with brown hair and one with blonde hair. It was kind of calming. I knew God was with us and that he'd take us to be with him or leave us to do something great," end quote. The road to recovery for both kids was long and very dicey. They both required multiple surgeries and rehab. Lage lost the use of one side of his body and had to relearn how to do most things. Mason suffered panic attacks and eventually got a dog who calms her enough that she is able to drive in the rain now, because dogs are the real guardian angels. Mason and Lage's former deacon, upon hearing what the children had endured, said he'd had a vision the night of the tornado that included guardian angels and 13 dark angels. One of the dark angels, he said, aimed the iron rod at Mason's heart, but the angel protecting Mason spread his wings and then said to Mason, "I'm sorry I still made it hit you." I'll have some choice words about this so-called vision a little later on. So, what was happening in Joplin, Missouri as the storm of the century raged through the town? Were these people, many of them children, actually seeing divine beings sent to protect them from harm or ferry their loved ones safely to the other side? Or was there something going on that only science can further explain? Strangers, you know I'm not a makeup girly, or really much of a girly at all. If a face takes more than 5 minutes to do, I'm not doing it. That's why I'm super excited to try Jones Road Beauty Miracle Balm. It comes in 15 gorgeous shades and can be used on your cheeks, eyelids, and lips. 3 in 1? Yes, please. You think I'm messing with 3 different products when I can just have it all in one? No brushes, no complicated routine, just use your fingers and go, giving you that your skin but better glow in under 60 seconds. The best part of Jones Road Beauty, all their products are actually good for your skin. Every formula is packed with skin-loving ingredients. It looks and feels natural, like you're not wearing makeup at all. All Jones Road formulas are clean and high-performing. No phthalates, sulfates, petroleum, or PEG. And Jones Road just launched their foundation stick. This skincare-forward foundation delivers buildable, real coverage while feeling completely weightless on your skin. It's dermatologist-tested and packed with skin-loving ingredients to nourish while you wear it. And the finish is really natural. Not too matte, not too dewy, just smooth, even, healthy-looking skin. That's available in 30 shades to match a wide range of skin tones. Modern-day makeup that's clean, strategic, and multifunctional for effortless routines. For a limited time, our listeners are getting a free, full-sized mascara on their first purchase when they use code STRANGE at checkout. Just head to jonesroadbeauty.com and use code STRANGE at checkout. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you. The so-called Butterfly People of Joplin, these flying beings that seemingly protected some of the survivors during the tornado, are, of course, not the first instance of people reporting some kind of otherworldly force protecting them from danger. Stories like this are littered throughout history all over the world. In 1978, in Freiburg, Germany, some mine workers reported seeing a man near the front of the mine where they were. As they got closer, they saw wings, and then the man let out a sound they described as a train's emergency brakes. The men ran out of the mine after this, and an hour later, the mine exploded. In Chernobyl, dozens of people reported seeing winged creatures hovering over the area right before the reactor exploded. And after the disaster at the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001, people reported seeing winged creatures around the towers before the first plane hit. Listen, I don't understand the mechanics of this phenomenon, but one would hope that if God or whoever is sending protectors, they would do more than just fly around a building before a plane purposely crashes into it. Like, what are you doing? Couldn't one of them have gone in and pulled the fire alarm? What purpose are they serving just being there? If they knew something awful was about to happen, where's the miracle if they didn't stop it from happening? Are we to understand that the miracle is that not more people died when the buildings collapsed because there were flying angel beings there to save them? More on that in a bit. Some white coat type folks posit that the phenomenon is a result of social contagion. According to a piece from the Cleveland Clinic, humans will mimic other people's emotions or behaviors because that's how we learn to interact with other people. The article begins, quote, "Our emotions can have a widespread effect. We express how we feel through our facial expressions, the language we use, our tone of voice, and physical gestures. And these emotions can catch on and directly influence those of other people. This catching of emotions is known as emotional contagion," end quote. There have been various examples and studies of emotional contagion that have shown that a mood can pass through a crowd. Think of large groups suddenly turning into violent mobs, or, as an article on the website Positive Psychology suggests, the general mood among the hippies during the Summer of Love, though one might attribute that to the widespread use of drugs. I could go down a rabbit hole on this topic. For example, I think a lot about how the use of masks during the height of the COVID epidemic may have contributed to an overall sense of loneliness and isolation. That, without realizing it, we rely on the facial expressions of others to feel connected. And before you get yourself twisted in a rage bait knot, please understand I'm not saying people should not have worn masks. I think people should still be wearing masks in large crowds, and if they're feeling sick at all. I'm just saying, not being able to see the expressions of those around us can make us forget that we're all in this together. However, I don't think social contagion explains what happened in Joplin during the tornado. It's not as though social contagion accounts for people having the same thoughts or experiences. It only explains people feeling generally similar to each other. I think a more likely explanation is stress-induced psychosis. An article from Healthline, a wellness website, says, quote, "Psychosis can be triggered by severe stress or trauma. The symptoms of stress-induced psychosis include hallucinations and delusions," end quote. The hallucinations can be auditory only, like hearing voices that aren't there, or visual. Natural disasters like tornadoes can cause this type of temporary psychosis, which doesn't require any underlying psychological conditions to experience. You may only experience it during the traumatic event and never again. But what if a more apt explanation comes from belief, either within the context of organized religion or the fierce defense of theories in online forums? Strangers, this episode of Strange and Unexplained with Daisy Egan is brought to you by Alloy Health. I love some parts of getting older, the whole NGAF of it all. What I don't like are the physical symptoms that come along with getting older, especially as someone who owns a uterus. Perimenopause and menopause are coming for us all, but you don't have to navigate it alone. With Alloy, you have access to a digital health platform that connects you with a menopause-specialized doctor to help you feel and look your best in midlife. Your doctor will help you find the best, safe, science-backed treatments for your symptoms, skin, hair, weight, and sexual wellness delivered right to your door. Everything is done online from the comfort of your home. No waiting for an appointment or in line at the pharmacy. Alloy is fast, accessible, and their treatments actually work. I love my Alloy eye cream. It's silky and light, and it actually helps reduce the appearance of those tiny little lines and calms my puffiness. Nobody likes a puffy eye. Join the 95% of women who tried Alloy and saw relief in the first 2 weeks. Head to myalloy.com and use code STRANGE and tell them all about your symptoms, and you'll get a fully customized treatment plan and unlimited messaging with your doctor. Plus, you'll get $20 off your first order today. Head to myalloy.com and use code STRANGE to get $20 off your first order. Cultural context is also important. Joplin, Missouri is part of the Bible Belt, an imaginary line in this country that is characterized by populations of deeply Christian folk. Given that, it's not surprising, perhaps, that survivors reported seeing angelic figures whom they generally assumed were sent by God to save them. Perhaps the reason there are not as many tales like this that came out of the 9/11 disaster is that the World Trade Center was located in godless New York City. Maybe if the buildings had been temples to God rather than the almighty dollar, we would have thousands of stories of angels shepherding survivors to safety. It's interesting to note that people with auditory hallucinations due to schizophrenia have vastly different experiences depending on the culture they live in. Studies have shown the differing experiences of hearing voices in some parts of India and Africa from those in Western cultures. So, yeah, people in a very Christian part of the country reported a very Christian experience during a period of intense trauma. That makes sense. There has also been scholarly debate about guardian angels for centuries. Listen, I don't mean to yuck anyone's yum here, but it boggles my mind that people have devoted their lives to debating completely subjective and wholly intangible topics. I think it's already absurd to try to debate the existence of something like guardian angels, as there's no scientific way to prove their existence one way or the other. Maybe that's unfair of me. I know that debate is a precursor to discovery. People spend all kinds of time debating the existence of a soul. Who knows? Maybe someday they'll figure out a way to prove that souls exist. Maybe someday someone will figure out how to trap a guardian angel in one of those machines the Ghostbusters used to trap ghosts, and we'll have some kind of definitive proof. At any rate, there have been centuries of debate as to the existence, purpose, and abilities of guardian angels. Some scholars believe every soul on Earth is assigned one, while others believe only Christians get one. That's a weird God who's like, you only get a protector if you believe I'm real, otherwise I'm taking my ball and going home. Some dude named Saint Basil argued that guardian angels can act based on our senses and imagination, but can never go against our will. Call me stupid, but doesn't that just sound like he's talking about something our own mind creates and not something that's sent by God? And to this point, I want to go back to the deacon who claimed to have had a vision of good angels and dark angels during the tornado. What is the implication here? That good and evil angels use weather events to act out their psycho-emotional drama? Does this mean that all bad things that happen to people are the result of evil angels throwing shit at us? If good angels are sent by God, and God is omnipotent and all that, shouldn't they be there in time to stop the bad angels from throwing shit at us? Shouldn't they have been able to stop the planes from flying into the World Trade Center? Shouldn't they have killed Hitler? If guardian angels exist, why do children get cancer? Why do bad things happen? Are they on a union break when the cancer strikes? When people thank God that the cancer went away, how do they explain God letting it happen in the first place? Please understand that my genuine curiosity about this stuff is not disrespect. There are, indeed, whole schools of study devoted to these questions led by dyed-in-the-wool theologians. Online debate, cough cough Reddit, suggests the hallucinations were the result of leaking toxins and/or gas, but from what I could find, there were no significant gas or toxin leaks, and the ones that did happen were patched quickly. Also, people don't generally hallucinate the same thing when exposed to an hallucinogen. Although, as one listener was quick to point out after my Kamar Dobbin incident episode, there is a drug that tends to produce hallucinations of mechanical elves, although the studies on that are not so clear-cut. And even if that is the case, one would assume that if there had been some kind of noxious chemical leak in Joplin that day, it would A, have had to have been widespread throughout the town in order to account for the distance between people who said they saw these butterfly people, and B, more widespread among the survivors and not, as it seems to have been, predominantly experienced by small children. To that point, some people believe these children were simply repeating stories their parents told them or saying what they thought people wanted them to say. And even though the legend goes that these children told these stories completely independently of each other, we actually don't know that that's true. Time has a way of distorting memories, and it's completely plausible that these stories passed around from one person to the next, and everyone just needed to believe each incident was independent of the others. Whatever the case may be, social contagion, trauma-induced psychosis, social pressure, or actually divine intervention, after the break, we'll hear one more survivor story, and you can decide for yourself what you believe explains it. Now that we've pondered some disparate explanations that people have come up with to explain this phenomenon in Joplin, let's hear one more story and see what makes sense to us. Emily's story was featured in Gregory Fish's 2024 documentary. Emily was 12 years old when the tornado struck. That day, one of her older brothers was graduating from Missouri Southern State University. The whole family, including her 4 siblings, some of their spouses, and her parents, were at the graduation ceremony. When it came time to head home, Emily was supposed to go with her oldest brother and his wife, but she said she got a weird feeling and instead decided to hang back and leave with other members of the family. Then, the sirens went off. Emily and her family, it seems, like most of the people in town, ignored the first siren, and instead of sheltering in place, they took off for home. As they were driving home, she felt big rain droplets and remembered being told once about an old wives' tale that big raindrops meant a tornado was coming. I mean, the tornado siren had already gone off, so yes, a tornado was probably coming. And yet, they still didn't take heed and find shelter. Once the tornado reached them, it picked up the car, tore it apart, and threw it. Emily had a severe leg injury. The injury was so bad, she was able to see inside of her leg. She also had a head wound that was bleeding. Her dad drove to a nearby dental office to do first aid and try to stop the bleeding. A nurse stopped in to help and applied a tourniquet. Emily said the nurse told her parents to stay close, as if to indicate that Emily was close to dying. She started to lose consciousness, and then she felt a, quote, hand on my shoulder, and I heard this voice that said, everything's going to be okay. It was this overwhelming calmness and peacefulness, and in my head it was over. This is where I died, end quote. She later said it was, quote, the most calming presence I've ever felt. Her brother then woke her up. To this day, she doesn't know where the voice came from. While she and her family were at the hospital, Emily said she saw a man in a white coat that stayed with her and her family the entire time, but never once looked at her leg. As Emily stated in the documentary, she believes that if she had left with her brother and his wife, one of her younger siblings would have been in her seat and likely wouldn't have survived. But also, she probably would have made it home before the tornado hit, so... Listen, when I was 12, I believed in a mythical land called Alexandria that I could visit through a portal in the bathroom. As I said, Emily heard the nurse tell her parents to stay close and assumed that meant she was dying. But it also could have just meant she needs to know you're nearby because this is a terrifying situation, so stay close. Also, she lost consciousness, so she actually couldn't have had any idea who did or didn't look at her leg. I am 100% sure someone attended to her split open leg, and it was likely the person in the white coat. No offense, but it's hard to trust the word of anyone in a situation like this. Like if Dorothy Gale sat down for a documentary interview and said her house had been lifted in a tornado and transported to a magical faraway land where she had to take care of a bunch of needy dudes just to get her own needs met, we'd all be like, sure, honey. But if the miracles from the immediate aftermath of the storm don't hold water, perhaps further ones do. Subsequently, doctors told Emily she would never run again, but she was determined. The next year, at a Memorial 5K, Emily ran and placed second in her age group. And then, one day, she was sitting outside her family's rebuilt home. Theirs had been destroyed on the same spot the new one was built, when butterflies started to land on her and only her. They didn't flock to anyone else in the family. Still, she has no idea where the butterflies came from, because there were no trees or grass or any plants nearby. Whatever those apparitions were from the body of stories reported after the storm, the image of wings and the concept of butterfly people has stuck with folks in town who were lucky enough to survive and see their community come back to life in the years since. Through symbols like butterflies and wings, the people of Joplin have continued to keep their faith alive. It's been over a decade now since the storm, and butterflies have come to symbolize healing in Joplin. What started as children eager to paint and draw the angels they said they saw has turned into collective artwork for the community to enjoy in memory of all they've been through. The best example of this is a mural in town that was collectively painted by over 200 children and 100 adults aptly titled Butterfly Effect, Dreams Take Flight. Butterflies are now featured prominently in public art throughout the city. Many who found it hard to talk about their experience used art as a successful avenue for expressing their experience. A nonprofit called Art Feeds Joplin offered art therapy in the aftermath of the storm to the children of Joplin. The main theme across all the art projects was the butterfly. A grant awarded by State Farm supported the painting of a tile butterfly mural. People can stand in front of it to make it look like they have butterfly wings. In 2016, for the 5th anniversary of the tornado, the Chamber of Commerce started selling butterfly sculptures with proceeds going to that year's Joplin Disaster Recovery Summit. Tanya Sprenkle, the Chamber's vice president, said in an interview, quote, "When we started looking at what theme we wanted to carry forward, a butterfly immediately came to the top as number one. It kind of represented a metamorphosis, a rebirth. We thought it embodied a positive influence and something beautiful that we could display." End quote. In 2013, country singer Tracy Lawrence released a song called Butterfly about the experiences of the survivors, the lyrics of which include, quote, "With a butterfly floating on the wind, protectors and collectors, women, children, and men, I believe in my soul, when it's my time I'll take a ride on the wings of a butterfly. Well, this world is full of cynics, but that's all right with me. I like to think that angels can look like anything." End quote. Another mural in Joplin, titled 161, features 161 butterflies for the 161 people who lost their lives that day. Also, through the Mayor's Monarch Pledge and the National Wildlife Foundation, the citizens of Joplin are encouraged to maintain wildlife habitats specifically with monarch butterflies in mind, and even create their own by integrating pollinator plants into their gardens. I mean, everyone who can should be doing that anyway, but that is very nice. The city of Joplin has really leaned into the whole butterfly thing. Listen, whatever gets you through the day, you know? Joplin's Cunningham Park was destroyed by the tornado, but is now a site to honor the victims and volunteers who helped in the aftermath. On the 5th anniversary, the city held an event in the park to teach children about butterflies and wind, to show them that the wind isn't always scary. The Butterfly Garden and Outlook in the park opened in 2014, featuring a butterfly pavilion, a water wall, steel outlines of homes to represent those destroyed by the tornado, and a bench that has a journal underneath it for people to write in. Keith Tidball, a researcher at Cornell who studies how nature can help after a crisis, told reporters, quote, "When you're hurt, nature heals. That's what this is about." End quote. The former mayor, Melody Colbert-Keene, said, quote, "When you hear people's survival stories, all of the younger kids always mention these butterflies. That's really what was protecting so many kids, because some of their parents weren't around. They were hurt. Joplin embraced that butterfly." End quote. Look, I don't mean to be a curmudgeon-y Carly. I really don't care what people believe in as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. If the people of Joplin believe that butterfly people came down from heaven or wherever to protect them, that's great. Though it does beg the question, what about the 161 people who died? Why didn't they get butterfly people? Maybe that's precisely why the survivors of one of the worst natural disasters in this country in modern history need to believe in the butterfly people. When something so senseless and tragic happens that is completely out of our control, how do we make sense of it? How do we reckon with our own survival when so many didn't make it? Maybe divine intervention is a way of dealing with survivors' guilt. Maybe these were all just stories told after the fact to make sense of the chaos and violence they survived. They say that when you wake up with a jerk from a dream in which you're falling, your mind actually creates the memory of the dream to explain why your body jerks. In other words, your body makes an involuntary movement big enough to wake you up with no outward cause, so your mind creates the dream to explain it. Maybe the butterfly people were a creation of the collective unconscious of the survivors of the Joplin tornado after the fact to explain a situation that seemed inexplicable. Who knows? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like I said, whatever gets you through the day. If it helps you to think there's a guiding hand on your shoulder keeping you safe from harm, who am I to say there isn't? It's probably nicer to go through the world that way than the way I do, white-knuckling it and expecting disaster at every turn. In these uncertain times, on a rapidly warming planet, it might do me well to conjure up my own butterfly person swooping down from the sky to save me from danger. At least just to cut the anxiety and preserve hope in the meantime. It might do us all well. Next time on Strange and Unexplained, there is a tale of a place in Ohio that is so tragic and terrifying it has lasted the decades and continues to scare the masses today. But the true story of what happened on Gore Orphanage Road is scarier than any campfire storyteller, Redditor, or screenwriter can tell. Strange and Unexplained is a production of Three Goose Entertainment with help from Grab Bag Collab. Special thanks to Richard Nacy Warner, a Grab Bag supporter at the executive producer level. This episode was written by me, Daisy Egan, with research by Keely Hayes, editorial help from Becca DiGregorio, music by Epidemic and Blue Dot Session, and audio engineering by Jeff Devine. If you'd like to support the show, please consider becoming a member of Grab Bag Collab. We have built an incredible community of listeners who support a small, profit-sharing, woman and non-binary owned business. At Grab Bag, we're committed to giving a platform to voices who might otherwise get overlooked by bigger networks. Plus, all our contributors get to keep ownership of their content. It's a whole new approach to podcasting. Come check it out at grabbagcollab.com. For just $4 a month or $40 a year, you can get Strange and Unexplained early and ad-free. And for just $8 or $80 a year, you'll get all the shows Grab Bag has to offer, including my other shows Dear Daisy and Shut the F Up Nick Lachey, as well as Amber Hunt's Crimes of the Centuries, The Catalyst, Tales of the Resistance, What If They're Wrong, and all of our quarterly shows. You can even sign up to join our live recordings. We have book clubs, live hangs, watch parties, and more. If you're feeling extra generous, you can sign up at the $50 level for even more perks, including all our shows and extras, and have your name read in the credits of our shows. Head to grabbagcollab.com today to join. To suggest an episode for Strange and Unexplained, you can email me directly at contact@strangeandunexplainedpod.com or go to strangeandunexplainedpod.com and fill out the contact form. You can follow me on Instagram at snupod or Daisy Egan and join the Facebook page to be a part of the conversation. Thanks so much for listening, and stay strange.